I was on multiple medications when I started this fast, and I want to be clear about that because I think it matters. January 2025, 11 days without food. Blood tests before I started, blood tests during, blood tests after. I'm Neil, 53, 13 years of NHS blood data. I'm not telling you to do what I did, but if you've been on medication for a while and you're quietly wondering whether fasting is something your body can actually handle, the data from those 11 days is worth seeing. And the same mechanism that was running in me is running in most people on long-term medication, regardless of what it is. Here's what I'm going to show you, the baseline, what my blood looks like going into an 11-day fast, and what actually happened during the fast. Weight, blood, glucose readings, how I felt on days 2, 4 and 8, and then the conversation with my GP after 12 weeks, because that's where it got interesting. Let's start with the numbers going in, because without those, the numbers coming out don't mean much. The conventional position on extended fasting is reasonable actually. If you're on medication, statins, blood pressure tablets, diabetes drugs, the lot, the guidance is don't change anything dramatically without medical supervision, because some medications interact with fasting. Blood glucose can drop unpredictably, and the body under stress behaves differently. I believed that for years. That framing kept me away from extended fasting altogether. The assumption baked into it, the one nobody quite says out loud, is that if you're metabolically compromised, if your numbers have been heading the wrong way, if you've been on long-term medication, fasting is a risk. Something for healthy people, not for people like me. Professor James Betts, metabolic physiologist at Bath, one of the sharper fasting researchers in the country, put it in a way that changed how I thought about this. He said, throughout evolution, we've had to learn to deal with intermittent food availability. Having the capacity to cope with those periods without food and still be able to function is going to be heavily positively selected for. In other words, the body wasn't built to eat every 3 hours. That's the modern intervention. The capacity is to fast. The capacity to fast is ancient. The medical caution is newer. And in some cases, entirely justified. In others, it may be assuming fragility that isn't there. That's what I wanted to find out. Let's give you the honest picture of where I was, December 2023, on 6 medications, statins, estomide, alpurinol, 2 asthma inhalers, antihistamines. Cholesterol was 8. That's after 11 years on statins. It was the highest reading I'd ever had. HbA1c, 47, pre-diabetic, 1 point from the clinical threshold for a diabetes diagnosis. ALT, liver enzyme, marker of liver stress, 69. The upper limit is 40. I was 173% of it. On statins, supposedly being managed. That's the before. Not one thing going wrong, multiple things heading the wrong direction simultaneously, and had been for years. And in that whole period, on all that medication, results were getting worse annually. Not once did anyone suggest fasting. The advice was always, take the tablets or stronger doses. Watch what you eat. Come back in 3 months. February 2024, I made a decision. I'd now been 10 days of a solid fast and 17 days of a solid water fast. And with 6 weeks in, I felt so much better. I stopped all of my medication. 1 month off statins, March 2024, the thing that every article told me would happen, cholesterol spike, dangerous rebound. Didn't happen. My total cholesterol went down to 7, down from 8. Still high, but now moving in the right direction, without medication, for the first time in over a decade. I stopped my statins and waited for the cholesterol spike. It never came. By January 2025, I was 11 months completely medication-free. HbA1c had come down from 46 to 40. Out of pre-diabetic range entirely. I'd been doing a lot of 18.6, 16.8, the average was actually 17.7 fasting as a daily baseline throughout most of that year. I'd done multiple shorter extended fasts and that 10-day and 17-day fast that I mentioned. And I'd been tracking my glucose and ketones on and off across the year. I'd done big fasts before. This wasn't my first. My body knew what to do. The January 2025 fast was a deliberate reset, a kickstart for the year. 9 days into January, I stopped eating. January the 9th. Didn't talk to anyone about it. I'd done them before. I just started. I was tracking daily. I knew my biomarkers, and my body had adapted significantly over the previous 11 months. That N=1 judgment. I'm not recommending anyone skip a GP conversation. But for me, the data and history gave me confidence. What I tracked during those 11 days, weight, glucose, ketones, and I had tracked how I felt morning and evening. Rough scale from 1 to 10, energy, mood, clarity. Day 2, the familiar transition, energy dipped, slightly cold, Mild brain fog. Not surprising. Glycogen was depleting. Body was switching fuel sources. Think of it like this. Most people spend their entire life in third gear. Every 3 hours, top up the tank. Insulin spikes, fats locked in. Extended fasting is learning to change gear properly. And the first day or two, you're grinding it a bit. It's not danger, it's just adaptation. Day 4, noticeably easier than previous fasts at the same point. Easier than it used to be. My body was learning. 26 hours into this fast, my GKI, my glucose ketone index, was at 2.7, which is in therapeutic ketosis. By day 11, my GKI was at 0.5. Ketones were 6, my glucose was 54. That was in cancer fighting autophagy stage. January 20th, 11 days in, my weight was 13.12. I'd gone in at 15.2 and had lost 1 stone, 4 pounds over those 10 days and 14 hours. 6 medications, statins, gout pills, asthma inhalers, allergy tablets, the lot. I stopped all of them in 2024. If documenting that kind of thing properly sounds worth following, please subscribe. My data. January 2025, blood test taken around the time of the fast, HbA1c 40, normal range. 11 months I've been off all the medications. In October 2022, on 6 medications, my HbA1c was 47. December, it was still 47. January 25, no medications for 11 months, it was down to 40. It had never gone down in the previous 13 years. My creatinine kidney function had improved 13% in the first month off medication, back to optimal after 11 years of elevation. Liver enzyme, ALT, from 69 on statins to 10 by November 2025. The upper limit is 40. I was at 173% of it on medication. Now I'm at 25% of it. That's not one test. That's a sustained trajectory across multiple markers across 2 years now. What my data suggests, and it's one person's data, 13 years of NHS records, it's not a clinical trial, is that the body's capacity to fast doesn't disappear because you've been on long-term medication. In my case, coming off medication and implementing extended fasting didn't produce the metabolic crisis the conventional framing implied. It produced improvement across nearly every marker I track. The conventional caution isn't wrong, it's incomplete. There's a difference between be careful, get supervised, monitor closely, and this isn't for people like you. If you're watching this without a diagnosis, blood slightly off, energy not what it was, GP says keep an eye on it, here's the thing worth knowing. The mechanism that was running in me for years before anyone put a clinical label on it doesn't wait for the diagnosis to start. Insulin sensitivity, glucose regulation, inflammatory load. These are processes operating right now in everyone, years before a threshold gets crossed. Understanding how extended fasting affects those processes is useful before the medication conversation. Far more useful than after it. If you're at the stage where you're starting to ask these questions, there's a free guide in the description, the 7-day fasting blueprint. It's where I'd start if I were doing this again. Not 11 days, 7, with the groundwork laid out properly. Links below and it's free. Now a serious note. Everything in this video is my own personal experience. I've documented it against NHS blood tests. It's educational content. It's not medical advice. If you're on medication, any medication, and you're considering changing your fasting pattern or diet, speak to your GP first.